Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Dr. Morteza Farajian, Executive Director of the Build America Bureau at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Morteza has served as a senior executive leading the Bureau since April of 2019. He's responsible for credit programs and loan guarantees with $29 billion in the existing portfolio and more than $22 billion allocated, issued, or pending in private activity bonds that support development of large-scale and multimodal transportation infrastructure. Before joining the Bureau, Morteza served as Acting Deputy Secretary of Transportation and Director of the Public-Private Partnership Office in Virginia. He received his PhD and MSc degrees in project management from the University of Maryland. He also has a BS degree in civil engineering. Morteza, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much to have me here, Pat. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Excellent. And today, a big shout out to all the loyal viewers of Café IBTTA. We appreciate your coming to see this program almost every week, and it's great to have you with us. Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And we are taking your questions and comments, and we want to get started right away. So today, March 1st, is the meteorological first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. So in the chat function, tell us your favorite things to do in springtime. Let us know what you like to do in springtime and tell us in the chat. You must be very excited. Yes, defrost. Woo! Thank you, Ian. Barbecue. Yeah, I love that too. Going to the park. Motorcycle riding. Yeah, to see the wildflowers. Plant flowers. Yeah, we all like to get out there in the gardens. I know my wife likes that. Hiking. Extended daylight. Yes, I think we go to daylight saving time on April 12th, or no, maybe it's this month. Pickleball. Nowruz, Persian New Year. Is that right? Yeah. Walk the dogs. Okay. We'll come back to more of your responses on what you like to do in the springtime, but let's turn to our guest, Morteza Farajian. Now, we're going to talk a lot about the Build America Bureau today, but first, tell us how you became involved in transportation finance.
Thanks for that question, Pat. I should start by saying that I'm actually from Iran, and somebody mentioned Nowruz, which is the new year that we celebrate in Iran. So March, especially, I believe it's March 20th, when we celebrate the first day of our calendar year, which is the beginning of the spring for us. Is always very unique. It's a time that we get with family, spend time, we deep clean the house. We try to come up with new resolutions for the new year. Since I was a kid, that was my favorite time of the year. And now I love Christmas and New Year. Since I came to US, that has been my favorite holiday party, because you can do pretty much the same things, but when it snows instead of when trees and flowers bloom. Both of them very, very good for me. As I mentioned, I'm not from here. I have lived in US for the last 12, 13, actually more than that, 15 or 16 years.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Time flies. It's just hard to keep track of it. But I'm from Iran. I got my bachelor's degree in United Arab Emirates in civil engineering. I came to US for my master's degree in project management, went to University of Maryland, and then got my PhD in project management, but with a focus in project finance, and especially public-private partnerships. Around the same time, I started working at VDOT when I graduated from my master's degree, and then started my PhD degree, which was late 2011, early 2012. Around that time, I joined VDOT. And the reason that I got interested in project finance is, although I started with an engineering degree, I quickly figured out that my skill sets were more aligned with procurement of projects, with negotiation of contracts, with trying to find innovative ways to put these projects together and move them forward, both in terms of funding and financing packages and in terms of alternative delivery models. And engineering is good. I still enjoy sometimes having conversations with my friends, although I remember just a little bit from what I learned in college. But some of the other topics that I mentioned earlier, negotiations, conflict resolution, some of those soft skill sets that is really needed for project development, project procurement. I found those in myself a little bit stronger than my engineering skill sets, and that's how I got into that field. And public-private partnerships, as I mentioned, it has been the center of most of the work that they have done, both in terms of academic work and in terms of professional work.
As you describe your transition from engineering into more of the softer skills, the negotiations and management, that kind of thing, I think of my father, who was a civil engineer and loved being a civil engineer. But as he advanced in his life, he also moved more to the management and negotiation side of things, working for civil engineering construction firms. So probably not an unusual career path to find the management after the engineering. So you run the Build America Bureau. Would you tell us a little bit about the Bureau? What is its mission and scope, and where does it sit within USDOT?
So Pat, Build America Bureau was created about 6.5 years ago, maybe close to 7 years now. And it was created because USDOT had multiple loan programs and technical assistance programs that were all across USDOT, different modes. Federal Highway Administration had TIFIA program that many of your viewers are probably familiar with that. Federal Railroad Administration had RIF program. And then private activity bonds was also something not necessarily new, but something that didn't really belong anywhere. It was a little bit of a unique child that nobody knew exactly where it should sit. In terms of technical assistance for innovative project delivery, innovative finance, it was hard to figure out who was exactly in charge of that. So Bureau was created as a one-stop shop to bring all of these programs under one roof, make it easy for people to have this point of contact within DOT that they can go to and have access to all of these innovative funding, financing options, delivery model options. When it was created, it started to be a relatively small organization. We are still a small organization. It's not too big. I have about 55 people at the Bureau currently, which is probably double the size than when I joined Bureau. But the opportunities that we can provide is significantly higher than what was utilized in the past. When I was hired, one of the reasons that in the first interview I had with, at the time, Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, she mentioned they're interested in hiring me was the fact that Virginia DOT had closed multiple TIFIA loans, almost half of the loans that throughout the United States TIFIA had closed in, I would say, between 2011 and 2016-17 timeframe. And they were interested to bring me on board and figure out how other states can also benefit from that program. Because as I mentioned earlier, we have huge capacity. As of today, we have over $100 billion lending capacity under TIFIA and RIF. But the loans that we were closing, let's say back in 2016, 2017 timeframe, 2018 timeframe, on average, it was about $2 to $2.5 billion a year. So you can see that the massive scale in terms of availability we have and a relatively small number in terms of how much every year was being closed, it suggested that there is an opportunity. When I joined Bureau, that was my goal, to make sure that Bureau truly becomes that one-stop shop that not only is providing loan to those who understand how they can take advantage of the loans, but also is a unit that is educating people, that is brainstorming with project sponsors on how they can take advantage of these loans, especially those who had never used it in the past. Still, more than half of the states in the United States have not used TIFIA loans, for example, which sometimes I don't get it that why that's the case, given all the benefits that these programs provide. But the good thing is that when we go and talk to them, when we show them how they can take advantage of these loans, which in some cases, they can save them between 20 to 40% compared to what they can get in market in terms of a bank loan, in terms of a bond issuance. When we tell them about the process, when we try to create capacity for them within their organization to be able to put these pieces of puzzle together and they close their first loan, it's interesting because then they become repeated customer and they come back to us. Oklahoma is a great example of a state that had not closed any loans up until, I believe the first loan we closed for them was in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, spring of 2020. And since then, they have been coming back to us, and now we have 4 or 5 loans that we are negotiating with them to close.
That's great. Our guest today is Morteza Farajian. He is the executive director of the Build America Bureau at the U.S. Department of Transportation. We're talking about the Build America Bureau. And Morteza, one of the big sections or one of the big missions of the Build America Bureau is to advance public-private partnerships. And, you know, I'm not surprised that the department went after you as you worked in the P3 department or for the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think you mentioned to me last week that when you arrived at the Bureau, you had been the #1 customer of the Build America Bureau. So for TIFIA loans and public-private partnerships. So tell us a little bit about P3s and how the Bureau helps to advance them.
Pat, one of the advantages that we have at the Bureau is the fact that we can work with different stakeholders, from public entities to private entities at various levels too, from state entities to city entities, to county entities, transit agencies. That gives us a really good seat at the table because we are not biased. We are not trying to promote one option versus the other option. When I was in Virginia, it took me quite a long time to create that reputation that although I was running the P3 office in Virginia, I was not really biased toward P3 delivery model compared to other delivery models. We would look at projects, we would look at goals and objectives that we had on the policy side. We would look at the market and we would decide whether a P3 delivery model for that particular project would give us the goals and objectives that we had or not. And I always say that I said no to more projects in Virginia to be delivered as P3 than I said yes to them. So I tried to create the same type of reputation when I joined Build America Bureau, that Build America Bureau is truly providing knowledge-based best practices to make sure that folks understand the advantages and disadvantages of different delivery models, and then they choose when and where a P3 model may work and when and where other models would work. That is also being reflected in the value for money guidelines that now Congress has asked us to draft and publicly share, which is probably going to go out within the next couple of months. When it comes to P3s, I think it's a very powerful tool. I use it on multiple projects in Virginia. The project I always bring up is I-66 express lanes in Northern Virginia, outside Beltway part of it, where Sintra is the project developer. Project was open to traffic. I believe a couple of months ago, I went there for ribbon cutting. That project, when we procured it as a P3 project, it saved us more than $1 billion compared to what we could do on our own. And that saving was not just a theoretical calculation. It was real because that's very good example. I don't think anyone else has done that, but we actually had a dual path procurement, procuring as a publicly financed option and procuring as a P3 option. We got bids for both of them, and then we compared. So the number I'm talking about is a real number.
Right.
And I tell people that wherever opportunities exist for private companies to innovate, similar to that project, the way that Sintra came up with better design, with better access points. They were able to provide better service to communities, increase the ridership, increase the flow of traffic, and of course, the revenue. That's where P3 makes sense. Wherever you can bring technology to the game, where public entities cannot have access to the same level of expertise and technology, that's where it makes sense. And I'm glad to see that now more and more people are thinking that way, to understand that P3s are not just a financing tool. They're really a tool that wherever flexibilities allow, private sector can come on board and innovate and come up with a better package.
It sounds like in addition to your engineering and management skills, you're bringing old-fashioned market research. You're going out there and asking the customers, what is it that they want? How can we most successfully solve the challenges that you face? Let's shift gears a little bit, and I've got a lot of questions for you, and I invite our viewers, if you have questions, please put them in the chat for all panelists and attendees. So we all know that the bipartisan infrastructure law was a once-in-a-generation investment in infrastructure. Can you tell us a little bit about how the bipartisan infrastructure law has affected the Build America Bureau? Are there new programs and initiatives that you're working on as a result of that legislation?
Unlike some of the other programs that they had a huge boost in funding, we did not really have a huge boost in funding. And quite honestly, we didn't need it. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of capacity, a lot of lending capacity. Our problem is somewhere else. Our problem is it's hard for a lot of entities to deviate from doing things old-fashioned, doing it the way that they have been doing in many, many years, which is fund your projects. If you don't have money, delay.
Yeah.
Phase your projects. Changing their mindset to think about other options, which is maybe I can still build it in a different way. Maybe I can finance it. Maybe I can actually package projects instead of phasing them. I can bundle projects and then save. Economy to scale, financing projects at 3-4% these days compared to paying almost 10% on construction cost escalation. That saves almost 7 years. Plus, you get to deliver your projects faster. That change in mindset is not easy. It requires a lot of work, and it requires, quite honestly, building a lot of capacity, because a lot of these organizations are not equipped with the right skill sets to think outside the box and to think about some of these innovative approaches. What bipartisan infrastructure law gave us was the tools that we need to create that capacity. So we are ramping up our efforts to provide technical assistance through multiple programs that bipartisan infrastructure law has created for us. One of them, it used to be a pilot program. We call it Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Program. We were getting only $5 million a year before. And the program was supposed to create these regional centers that we give them a grant, maybe about $1 million, $1.5 million, so they can go and hire expertise, hire advisors, and help folks in that region to think about this alternative delivery and funding and financing options for their projects. Well, the good news is that from pilot program, now that's an established program, the level of funding is going up. We are going to issue a NOFO for $24 million within the next couple of weeks. I encourage everyone on this call to look at that, because it's not very competitive. And the first 2 rounds, pretty much everyone who applied and had a complete package got that funding. Other programs that bipartisan infrastructure law has created for us, one of them is for rural and tribal communities. It's a technical assistance program. We get $10 million over 5 years that we can provide to them as grants, again, to create capacity, organizational capacity. We have another one that is specifically geared toward innovative financing and innovative delivery models. Some know it as asset concession technical assistance program. I would like to call it innovative delivery and financing technical assistance program. We get $100 million over the next 5 years. And the idea for that program is a lot of public entities, whether it's municipalities, transit agencies, or even highway commissions, they have assets that those assets have value, but they are not utilized to the best value. The example I always use is a parking lot right next to a transit station, which is not the best use for that asset, right? What we want to do is we want to provide that grant program to those who are interested to partner with us, do an asset scanning, that's the term we use, and try to figure out which one of their assets is being underutilized and how they can put it in better use. And the whole idea there is that we would like to create public-private partnerships, and we will be able to finance most of those projects ourselves through our programs. We would like to subsidize financing cost of those projects to see those assets be developed. Like, for example, a mixed-use development instead of the parking lot would be a win-win situation for everyone. The municipality is going to see more economic development right next to the transit station. More people are going to live there. Hopefully, we're going to see some affordable housing, some retail activities, as well as creating revenue for that transit station, because that land is not generating any revenue for them. But hopefully, going through this process, we can generate new sources of revenues for folks. So NOFO for that one is going to go out soon too. Please look at it if you represent one of those entities that I mentioned earlier. And then we have Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Program that some folks might be familiar with. That's another technical assistance program that is providing more general type of technical assistance. It's not just limited to innovative financing or innovative delivery model. A combination of all of those is helping us to significantly ramp up our efforts to build capacity. I should also mention Build America Center, which is a combination of 5 universities that we have designated solely to produce educational material, so folks can educate themselves on some of these new concepts and equip themselves with that knowledge so they can take it back to organizations and think outside the box.
It sounds like you've got a lot of tools to provide technical assistance to government agencies and others who want to get involved and expand their project finance activities. And I assume that people can find these on the Build America Bureau website, or at least some of them. Is that correct?
That is correct. The best way to learn about them is to follow our LinkedIn page. Whenever there is something new, we always post it on our LinkedIn page. We have a newsletter on quarterly basis. We talk about all the projects that we are closing a loan on them and all these new NOFOs that we are putting out. And then our website always will have this information uploaded there as well. So those are the 3 different ways that folks can get information about these products.
Morteza, building on the subject of mixed use and multimodal, I have a sense that you're striving to get people to look at the broader picture of transportation, that if you build a toll road, how can you also support transit? What about park and ride facilities, et cetera? Talk to us about that expansive view, that multimodal approach.
Pat, I always tell folks that from having a very narrow view, which is focused on one project, we should broaden the horizon for ourselves and look at how these projects are all connected to each other. Because at the end of the day, transportation is a system. It's not just individual projects. Just yesterday, I was in Austin and we signed a emerging project agreement with City of Austin to help them develop $22 billion worth of projects that they have, which is multimodal. As you mentioned, they want to make improvements to their highways in terms of safety improvements. They want to make improvements to their airport. They want to put a cap on top of I-35 and then develop on top of that, as well as transit and light rail expansion that they have in their city. That's a great example that all of those projects work in relationship with each other. You cannot just separate one from the rest and say that the system is still going to work. If you are developing your airport, you need to make sure that there are connections to the airport, different modes of transportation that can get folks to the airport. Or vice versa. You mentioned transit-oriented development. You cannot just build transit but not have ridership on it because you don't have density around your transit stations. And then, of course, affordable housing. With all of this development, we want to make sure that it is in a sustainable way, it's in an equitable way, and people who cannot afford living in those neighborhoods anymore would still have an option to stay in their neighborhoods. That's the only way we can get these projects done, because those who have worked on larger projects, they know that you need to have a stakeholder support, and you need to make sure that everyone in that community is going to benefit from these these improvements. Highway users, as well as transit users, as well as low-income community, everyone else. Like, you need to create walkable paths for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and that approach is really what we are promoting. And I hope that conversation that we had with City of Austin yesterday, the agreement we signed with them to get involved early in the process and help them take advantage of the best practices, bring different stakeholders to table, engage them, talk, not only just talk to them, but also get feedback from them and improve the project, would help for some of these projects to move forward with less resistance from stakeholders, which is going to be a good news for everyone, because it's going to be less time, less cost. And I always say that I-66 is another great example, a toll road that nobody could believe in Northern Virginia would be built without any opposition from 3 counties, that it's hard for them to agree on the same topic because they come from 3 different policy backgrounds, talking about Arlington, Fairfax, and Prince William counties. But all 3 of them supported I-66 improvements when we got the bid and we were ready to award the contract, because they were all part of the process from early stages. And we had already built in something for all of them. I-66 has express lanes, it has transit that is funded, that is using express lanes, HOVs drive for free, park and ride facilities have been expanded, as well as some of the other improvements that the project developer is making to provide additional benefits to communities.
Morteza, that's great. We have a question from an audience member, Greg Slater from the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, by way of Amy Lettler. And Greg asks, toll agencies have historically not accessed the TIFIA market much. You've mentioned a few new programs. What's the best program to encourage and access support services early in the project planning process, with an emphasis on early?
I should say hi to Greg. He has a lot of experience in Maryland before moving down to Florida. So some of these technical assistance programs that I mentioned, they can be used to create that early stage capacity. And for toll agencies, many of them, because historically they have been more familiar with bonds, I think they have a tendency to go down that path because it's a known path for them.
Right.
But I encourage them to take advantage of some of the technical assistance programs that we have. They can even call us and we can sit down and talk to them. We can have brainstorming sessions. Those are for free. We don't charge for those. We can share best practices and knowledge with them, but just as an advisor that is working for you for free. So encourage all tolling agencies, if they have not considered these options, to just set up a call with us. We can walk them through the process. We can tell them about what we can do for them, how they can benefit from these programs. Sometimes people just compare the interest rates and they say that, oh, I can just go to market and issue A-rated bonds, and the interest rate is not very different from your interest rate. So why should I go through the process of getting a loan from you? But there are many more benefits in these loans, that the interest rate itself is just one element of saving. For example, we can come up with a repayment schedule that could push back the first payment up until 5 years after project completion date. And for toll agencies that are building greenfield projects, that's critical, because you want to build your road, you want to operate it for 4 or 5 years to go through ramp-up phase and then have enough cash to pay us back. With bonds, it's a little bit tricky, because from day one, you need to think about how to pay interest, as well as other benefits that I believe you're running out of time. I cannot cover all of them, but I'll be more than happy to talk to individuals separately offline to go through those.
Beautiful. So people can pick up the phone or they can email you, and you'll conduct a brainstorming session with them to figure out how to access these tools early in the process. That's great. I am, Morteza, I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom. So, viewers of Café IBTTA, next week in this time slot, March 8th, In celebration of International Women's Day, IBTTA's Women in Tolling Council is sponsoring a discussion on the impact of transportation or lack thereof on women across the world. A 1-hour webinar called Ensuring Equity in Transportation with Joy Dean, Diana Mendez, and Susana Zamatoro. We hope you'll join us for that. Our Communications, HR, and Legal Workshop, March 25 through 28 in Norfolk, Virginia. Check that out on the calendar. Our Technology Summit happens April 29 through May 2nd in Indianapolis. Our Road Usage Charging Conference and Finance Summit happens June 4 through 6 in Salt Lake City. Check the IBTTA website for details on all of our upcoming events. Well, Morteza, before we sign off, what final words of wisdom do you have for our viewers?
Pat, I know going down a path that we have not explored before can always be challenging, especially if you're working for a public entity. I have worked for government entities for the last 12, 13 years. I know how difficult it is sometimes to make those changes. But I encourage everyone to talk to their peers who have gone down that path. Just recently, Orange County Transportation Authority usually is talking about how they saved more than $500 million through innovative financing on I-405 improvement project. Those are all real examples that if you look at them, you would better understand that when we talk about these savings, these are real. These are not imaginary. These are real savings for your taxpayers. And don't be scared. We are here to help you. The way that Build America Bureau works is not really like a government entity. I have set it up to be different than a government operations. I know I still need to be within government and operate like a government entity, but to the extent possible, I'm trying to make this work like an efficient operation that we're trying to make things streamlined. We are trying to take down the silos and we are not trying to just sit here in our office and wait for you to come to us. We can come to you as well. So don't be scared. Talk to us. We are your partners. We would help you any way we can to make sure that you can take advantage of all the tools, all the benefits that are on table. I did it myself when I was in Virginia. I know exactly what challenges you have. So having that conversation could help because I speak your language. So looking forward to talk to your viewers sometime soon.
Morteza, thank you so much for being our guest on the program today. It's been an absolute delight. And to all our viewers, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you